Excellent. Hi there, you join me on a lovely sunny day outside. You can hear everybody's out in their garden making as much noise as possible for the background of this video. I'm Darren from Untitled Studios, and today I'm going to be going through part of the ClyphX Pro setup, and part of that is actually called Macrobat. Now, Macrobat, Acrobat, kind of gives it away in its name, and one of the downsides of macros within Ableton is they're pretty rigid. They're fixed to 8, and can't do much about that, but they're fixed to only controlling what is within their own rack. And with Macrobat, we're going to break a few of those myths and actually give you the ability to, well, go anywhere. Let's have a look at how things work. Okay, so the first thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to install anything, because Macrobat actually comes as a standard part of ClyphX Pro. So once you've gone through that installation procedure, you're ready to rock and roll. Now, as with ClyphX, Macrobat does come with a manual, and we'd always suggest reading through the manual first just to give yourself an overview of things. As with everything within ClyphX Pro, you need to pay attention to the syntax. It's very, very easy, but you just need to make sure that you spell things right, which I commonly don't. Receive is a great one, I before E, etc. And in a similar intent to how ClyphX works, is that you've got your X controls, your X triggers, etc., etc. Macrobat has different rack types. Now, there's actually a lesson within your help view. If we just go to the help view here and go to packs, if you're having trouble accessing packs within the latest version of Ableton Live 10, then actually check the manual for ClyphX Pro, and there's a manual walk around to enable you to find them. And within here we do have a Macrobat racks tutorial. Now, I'm not going to go through that because I've been playing with this for around, well, to be fair, it's 1:10, about 3 hours, and in that time I've achieved one thing I've always wanted to achieve, and I've learned sort of 3 or 4 of the different racks already. So I'm going to go through those on this video, and we'll revisit some of the others later. Now, the first one I'm going to look at, and one of the things I really like about Macrobat is the fact that I don't have to have an expensive controller. I mean, if you've got a push 2 or a push, the screen can come to life with ClyphX Pro and Macrobat, but I'm just going to use a little launch control here, and I'm going to go into use 1. Now, obviously this is standard MIDI mapping stuff, and if I go into here, I'm just going to map this knob. There we go. Excellent. So all this is, and I could create this from scratch, is effectively I've dragged in a blank audio effect rack. Bring it so I can view it. Command R, Control R if you're on the Windows. Name it anything, and then square brackets. And square brackets tell the script that this is actually going to be a Macrobat rack. And in this case, I'm going to name it Learn. There you go. And pretty much that's as much as you need to do to define the name of the rack. And then it becomes naming the macro. Now, in true Blue Peter style, which all the UK viewers will understand, here's one I prepared earlier. What I've done is I've renamed macro number 1 as, in square brackets, Learn. So, what does that do? Well, let me click on the volume. And remember, my control is mapped to that. It now learns the volume. Okay, clever. It's changed to another volume with the mouse. It's updated, and of course, because I've got my value scaling settings in preferences, and if I just go to live preferences, link MIDI, takeover mode, and the choice, I normally go for value scaling because it doesn't rely on you getting back to an exact value, and if you turn and dial up, you expect the parameters to start moving up and vice versa down. And effectively, whatever I click on and control, it automatically updates to take control of it. Now, if I wanted to, and let's go through the mapping again, and on the MIDI on off, I'm going to click that, so that bottom button there. So now that's on, and let's move it to track 1, so I'm in control of track 1. Now, if I turn the rack off and move to track 2, you would expect the macro, because it's in view, to follow to track 2, but because the rack is off, it retains control over what you'd set it at. So it's a way of locking a parameter, if you like. So that's pretty cool, and especially if you've got one of those large kind of one knob controllers, then that's going to be a pretty decent thing to be using. Okay, what should I do next? Right, let's go to factory, and I think it's 2. 2, no, factory 3. There we go. So I've got control of my macros here. Let's have a look at, what did I call R&R? Random and reset. Wow. Now, these can be really rather cool. I've got Das Funk as a setting in there. Let's just put some random notes in. Now, let's have a listen to what they sound like. Oh, way over the top there. Wonderful. Do. Excellent. So you've got your little ditty melody playing, etc, etc, and you like the sound of it, but you know, you want a bit of randomization. Well, this rack here, this one, no macros map, nothing at all. It's just called in square brackets RND for random. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on. And magically it's going to randomize the first device or rack that isn't a Macrobat rack to its right. Now, if I turn it off again, you'll notice it changes, and so on and so forth. But it's not affecting this chorus device over here. So when it's just RND in brackets on its own, it's going to focus on one device. If I wanted to reset that particular device back to the standard, as in you dropped a blank device or instrument into live, turn the reset, rack on. Similar principle, no macros, it's just called square brackets, RST, square brackets. There's probably a technical term for square brackets, but I'm not sure what that is yet. Again, random, reset. And the change of state from on to off triggers the action. But I still have this lovely little chorus doing here, and I want to randomize everything. So in this rack, square brackets RND space all does everything to its right. Very cool indeed. Reset all, can you guess? Yeah. Resets everything back to the standard. Again, your default when you dragged it into the set. And similar to all the other racks in there, it's just RST space all in your square brackets. Right, let's get to business. Chain mixing time. Woo! Love this. Got a drum max set up. Obviously, I've not got much of a controller to be playing the drums, as it were. But if you consider each one of these samples, slots, is a chain. And as you can see, we've got 2 sends on this particular set, because I've got the reverb on A and the delay on B. I've got a volume, a volume, and I've got pan, etc. So this rack here is called chain vol, or chain volume. Now the macros themselves can either be named after the numeric position they fall in. So number 1 looks after number 1, and as you can see there, goes up and down, of course with the MIDI controller too. Now the beauty of this, if you have automation going, is that you also will see bi-directional feedback as well. So you're never going to be in a position where you move and you find, oh whoops, I didn't want to do that. The other way of naming, as a convention, is to name it as the macro, as the chain itself is named. So in this case, square brackets, and at this stage you have to put it in the speech bubbles, rim 909 speech bubble bracket, and of course that then that will enable me to change the volume. Now that's quite cool, because if you wanted to, you could name all of these by the names of the slots, and then if you ended up moving them for any reason or other, then really cool, you'll actually see those move and retain their mappings. Now the other two racks in these chain mix racks, chain pan, ta-da, very simple. And again, the same bidirectional feedback and send. So I've got control of send A. And you can do this up to the maximum number of sends, which from memory is 12. All you do is you name your rack chain send and then the letter that represents the rack, A. Now the other thing that I've done in here, we'll come back to this one in another video, is receive and send. Now this is where Acrobat really gets clever. What we've looked at is effectively racks that can look after bits that are outside of them, other parameters. How this works is basically a receiver rack that can pick up the names of macros of sender racks elsewhere in your set. Now I've got one, two, I've got a blank audio effect rack here just to flick into every now and again. I've got just two sender racks at the moment, and when I have finished doing my setup, I'll move these into individual tracks and move this base receiver into the group or a master. Now this is brilliant. I've got a receiver, and that receiver is set up to receive from macros called base 1, base 2, base 3, base 4, and so on. And then I've got a sender rack. In fact, I've got two sender racks. Now the difference between the sender racks is the names of the macros. So in here I've got base 1, and in here I've got base 2. Now watch happens. Base 1 and base 2. So I've got one rack controlling multiple racks. Now give this a thought for a second. One of the downsides of trying to DJ with a push potentially is you have to focus on a track, on a rack, to affect the signal effectively. So most of us as DJs would be used to having a channel strip and being able to quickly move between tracks. With push, it's very difficult to affect the bass on 3 channels at the same time to really tighten up your mix. Well, not anymore, because what I've done is I've actually set up 3 receiver racks here, and they're all based on the same principle. I've got bass 1 to 8, mid 1 to 8, high 1 to 8, and in each of the sender racks I've got mid 1 and then mid 2, and then I'd continue the theme. Now what that means is whichever one of these racks I focus on, it's going to look after the high. We'll move across there to here. Okay. Now, why is that cool? Leave that on 1, of course, and put that on 2. Okay, let's move the bass, the mid, the high. Remember, these racks actually aren't doing anything in particular, and now I've able to go through. Oops, not that one. Up. So I'm in charge of the bass across 8 tracks, and let's put bass 1 and bass 2 up to full and have a look. Bass 1 up full, bass 2 up full, and just say we'll turn it back to 0, 0, 0, and let's put them to halfway to show the bidirectional feedback. And we're back to the middle. Now this is great with the launch control, but maybe I'll show it in another video. Imagine the push 2 screen, and along the bottom you've got 8 racks. Each rack focuses on 1 parameter but across 8 tracks. So you can quickly switch to the bass and change the bass across all 8, start to equalize them, bring the mids, change the highs, fade to grey, all of that good stuff. Like I said, 3 hours in, as I've been dabbling with, we'll come back with another video with some more of the stuff that's in Macrobat. Thanks for watching.